Welcome to the Syracuse Lacrosse Podcast. I'm your host, Dan. You can get a hold of me via Twitter and or Instagram at Cuse1987. Any tips, any guests you want to see or want to listen to, anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. If you want to discuss lacrosse, my Twitter is always open, so as is my Instagram. Always ready to talk lacrosse with anybody that wants to listen. So feel free to reach out on there. This podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, and or many other platforms that you might find your podcast on. If you don't see it on your podcast platform, please feel free to reach out on my Instagram or Twitter, and I will do my best to make it available for you. If you enjoy this podcast, please feel free to hit the subscribe and follow. Leave a review, leave a comment on the review. Helps me figure out what I can do to make the podcast better, what I'm doing good, just a little feedback. So you can also submit your feedback on my Twitter and or Instagram. I truly appreciate it. So a couple weeks ago, I believe it was on the first episode, actually, we kind of teased a little bit that we talk about the roster, some guys that left, some guys that would step up in that role, some guys that need to step up. I guess that's basically the same thing, but just a way to think about it is there's some guys on this team that are going to have a huge role that may have not had a big role. There are some guys that might take a step forward or may stay the same. So I guess we're going to see where this team goes. I've got some opinions on some of those guys, some of the guys that are gone, some guys that are going to step up. So we're going to do that by position or by position grouping. So we'll go attack, midfield, face-off, and defense. And then I will try and give you my projected starting 9 as I see Drake Porter as the lead goaltender going into this year. So that's the only one that I know for sure. I have a couple other guys that I know for sure, but we'll go through that as we do it. So let's start with the attack, though. We'll go first with the guys that we lost. Bradley Voigt, Nate Solomon, two great facilitators of this offense. Guys that ran the offense from behind X. Also guys that can run it from up top. You see a lot more of that in today's game, but it's still rare to find an attackman that can dodge from the top and also dodge from behind. So it's good. It's good to have. It's not good. It's good that they were on the team last year. When the team was going through injuries on the midfield line, these two stepped up tremendously and made this offense go. They are both playing pro lacrosse now, as far as I know. So good for them. Truly will miss them on this team. Bradley Voigt became one of my favorite players. He is a local guy, kind of local. He's actually out of Penn Yan. Nate Solomon was from Alpharetta, Georgia. He played under Liam Banks. Liam Banks is a well-known Syracuse name. For those who don't know, played at Syracuse, now coaches for the Atlanta Blaze of the MLL. So that's a good Syracuse connection to have. He also runs a club program down in Atlanta, I believe. So he's filtering guys for Syracuse, and Syracuse now will try and schedule games. I know they've scheduled games down in Alpharetta, or down in Georgia, I should say, where the Blaze play to kind of give Nate. They kind of gave Nate a game at home, so that was nice. So those are the two guys that this team lost. Guys that are coming back, Stephen Rafis, obviously, the other attackman on this team. Wasn't really healthy all last year, so I guess we'll see kind of how he does as long as he stays healthy. Another guy that comes back, Griffin Cook. Griffin Cook and Rafis should be good. together. I liked them both when I saw them on the field last year, as they kind of did a rotation based. I think Cook will take a big step forward due to the fact that he will be relied on more with Voit and Solomon gone. I see them putting up a lot of points. The other guy, the third attackman that I probably would like to see on the field, is one of the younger guys on this team. He was a sophomore last year, Owen Seabold. I really like his game from what I saw in the later stages of games last year. Guy that had good moves, quick on his feet, had a really good shot. So I look for him to kind of step up. I think he'll be the third slot, but I think you'll see, as Desko typically does, and will be interesting to see under March's system, whether they do a rotation base or whether they run the same guys. I know Desko has done it before where he's run out guys and run a rotation base all year. So the Griffin Cooks get experience. So Owen Seabold got experience last year. That may help the team this year due to the fact that they lost two of their more experienced players on this team. So my starting three for the attack right now, without seeing this team play in an actual game, I would probably go with Stephen Rafis, Griffin Cook, and then I'd also slot Owen Seabold with somebody else probably coming in as a sleeper. Maybe somebody like a Mikey Berkman, who was a freshman last year, or somebody else that can slot in. So that's my prediction for attack. We'll now go to the midfield line. Now, guys that we lost, we're gonna focus on two different parts of the midfield. We're gonna focus on the defensive side and the offensive side, as both sides have kind of separated themselves in a way. Guys play short stick D midi, don't play a lot of offense, or long stick midi, and then there's the offensive guys per se. So first we'll focus on short stick D midi. One big loss, Luke Swasnik, one of the glue guys on this team last year. We're in a rotation with Peter Dirth for the most part. That's a big loss for this team, losing Swasnik, although they returned Dirth for another year. Dirth is one of my favorite guys on this team. I look for him to take the starting nod, as he did, continue taking the starting nod as he did last year. He's probably going to be subbed out every now and then by Spencer Small. Spencer Small played a good amount last year. They typically run with 3 D middies. So I look for Logan Dyball, I think is how his name is pronounced. I look for him to kind of step up. On the long stick midi side, they lose a guy that wore the Harrowwood number 11 in Austin Fusco. Austin played a lot of years on this team, kind of was a role player for a few years, and then really, really stepped up the past 2 years. Playing long stick midi, also on man down. He was in there, a guy that did it all for this team. Played down in the box when needed. The guy that's going to step up, and he already did last year, but he's going to have to take a bigger step forward, in my opinion, is Brett Kennedy. Kennedy is, I would say, this team's version of Joel White, a guy who can do it all. A guy who's going to make some plays, a guy who also can take the ball away from just about anybody. So I think we may see him move down into the box, but I'm interested to see what other people have to say about that. I'm hoping that Kennedy puts on some weight, though, if he goes down to the box. But if not, then it'll be a good thing for him. It's a good thing for him to be on the midfield line, but I think we might see him with his experience move down to the box, given the fact that they lost a lot of talent from the defensive box. On the offensive midi line, we saw a couple of guys lost on this team. Brad McKinney, and that was the one major one as far as I know. They've obviously got some big pieces coming back. It's a good offensive team that should take a huge step forward from last year. they've got a guy like Tucker Dordevic coming back, who was out all year. Look for him to take a big step forward and help this team out tremendously. And the guy that's going to help this team out even more than that is the guy that, in my 22 cents, ironically, is going to rock the number 22 for the Orange, and Chase Scanlon. Chase is going to help this team out tremendously. Interested to see what Pat March does with him. Whether he slots him down to the attack a little bit, get some more opportunities on the attack, or whether he runs him at mid. He did run midfield at Loyola. Interesting, like I said, interesting to see what March does with him this year. Another guy that looks to take a step forward for this team is Jacob Buttermore. He played a lot last year, but look for him to take a good step forward this year. There's a couple other guys. We're looking at David Lipka, who will be the junior this year, redshirt junior. Lucas Quinn, who kind of stepped up last year a little bit. I look for him to take it. He's that guy that should take the step forward, and we cannot forget about Brandon Curry. So my starting three for these guys is going to be Brandon Curry. It's also going to be Chase Scanlon, and then it's going to be Tucker Dordevic. That would be my first line. I would think, I'm going to say Brett Kennedy as the long stick midi, and Peter Dirth as the short stick defensive midi. So look for those both to get played. Like I said, look for those both to get playing time. Like I said, though, due to the fact that this team lost a lot of talent, on the midi line and the defensive line, look for Brett Kennedy to play down at the poles. The biggest turnaround is going to be on this defensive side, so we're going to focus on that. That's my main focus of this, given who they lost. They lost a guy, Tyson Bomberry, who I believe basically started from day one for this team. It's a guy who did everything. He's a guy who had some huge hits, some highlight hits, I would say. Somebody that did a lot for this team. The other guy who kind of who stepped up a lot is his senior year, Marcus Cunningham. And then that guy made a lot of plays for this team. He seemed to be in the right spot at the right time. I look for him to take. He's going to be a big loss for this team. I apologize. The guys that are going to fill in, there's a couple of guys that I'm looking at. Nick DiPietro is a guy that I'm gonna want to see play a ton of minutes, see what he does with more minutes. I'm also looking at Jack Kennedy, which is Brett Kennedy's brother. So we're going to look at that. We're going to see if he put on a little weight, as I believe he redshirted last year. So look for him to either take a step forward, or interesting to see what Coach Leland Rogers does with the defense. The guy that's going to hold down the middle, though, Nick Mellon. The guy that he will be wearing number 11 this year. For those who don't know, number 11 is handed out to typically the best defender. Tradition started after Joel White. So I look for him to take a huge step forward. I would say he wasn't healthy all last year. And now, given the offseason to heal, given everything to get stronger, look for him to take a big step forward on this defense and command this defense, as he did last year in a sense. But he also is going to have a lot of help on the D midi side. So look for that to step up. So my starting three for that would be DiPietro, Mellon in the middle, most likely, and then maybe a rotation of. There's a couple of guys that I see, a couple of guys that I haven't mentioned. Jerry Stats. And then also Jack Kennedy. Look for those guys to kind of maybe have a rotation. Maybe Coach Rogers runs a rotation with them. So, just interested to see what this defense does. Whether they take a step back, losing all the pieces that they lost, losing all the experience that they lost, I should say. Or whether they take a step forward. Young guys that got to step up, know they got to step up. Whether these guys take a big step forward. But the position that didn't lose anybody, but still needs a lot of improvement, in my opinion, is the face-off position. We've got everybody returning for face-off. Interested to see what this team does. Danny Varillo took a lot of the face-offs last year. Kind of subbed in with Jacob Fopp towards the end. I look for those two to step up. They're going to come out with something to prove this year, and hopefully that motivates them a lot. Varillo is going to be a senior, so he wants to win. I mean, it's a big year for him. Last year he faced off against his brother, so look for that. He doesn't have to worry about that anymore. Faced off his brother when they played Navy, so that pressure's off of him. So I look for him to step up, I would say. The guy that could take a big step forward is actually Nate Carlo. He's actually a local kid out of Marcellus. So look for him to kind of step up and take a big step forward. I can't wait to see what he does if he gets some playing time. He did play sparingly last year, but maybe he takes a step forward. Maybe Desco runs a 3-man rotation on the face-off to keep everybody fresh. I know he typically does the 2-man game where he'll rotate guys in for maybe a face-off or two just to keep everybody fresh. So look for that to continue with these as everybody returns. Well, also we've got some freshmen coming in. A couple names that I wanted to go back to that I forgot about. Team captain Jamie Tromboli. He might take a big step forward. I guess the question is, where does he fit on this offense? I mean, this is a loaded offense that comes back now. A loaded midfield line that comes back. He might replace Jacob Buttermore on the start. I should say might, not might. He will replace Jacob Buttermore. Jacob Buttermore will probably run the second line of midfield, which is a good fit for him. Look for Jacob Buttermore to take control of that second line, with Tromboli taking control of that first line. Lipka will probably also run the second line along with Lucas Quinn. So look for that to be your second line. So then we'll go with once again Jamie Tromboli on the first line, along with Tucker Dordovich, and also looking at Chase Scanlon for the third position. Like I said, Chase Scanlon may play some midi, may play some attack. It depends on what March does with the system. I need to watch a little bit of film to see how he rotates his attack, whether he brings him up to play midi, whether he brings some of his middies down to play attack. I know some coaches do it, some coaches are against it. So, and then for the second line, we're going to go with Lucas Quinn, David Lipka, and then Jacob Buttermore. Look for Buttermore as the one guy on the second line to kind of fill in an attack a little bit. Maybe he gets a better chance at attack. So look for that to happen at some point. Goalie's kind of secure. Drake Porter returns for his senior year. So look for this team to rally around their goalie. A guy that went through the ups and downs of last year. A guy that has put in his time at this program. So look for him to take a big step forward, I would say. He was very good in clutch situations last year. Look for him to take a big step forward and just continue to improve. The guy that's probably going to back him up, that's a big question. I mean, I to be honest, I see it as either Willie Clan or Nate McPeak. Desko did rotate a couple of guys in last year, so look for one of those two to fill in as the backup. So once again, your starting 9, in my opinion, is going to be Griffin Cook on attack, Owen Seabald on attack, and then also Stephen Rafis on attack. At the midfield line, we're going to on your first line, short stick D midi, I should say. You're gonna have Peter Dearth. Long stick midi, I'm gonna slot Brett Kennedy in there for now. Although that, like I said before, that may change depending on what the need for this team is. For your offensive middies, we're gonna go with Brendan Curry, Jamie Tromboli, and also Chase Scanlon as your starters, with your second line as David Lipka, Lucas Quinn, and then Jacob Buttermore. Face-off, I'm looking at probably Verillo starting the year. Unless Fopp took a big step forward in the offseason, I look for Verillo to start, with Fopp giving him a rest every now and again. Like I said before, Verillo is very motivated coming into this year, so look for that to play a big factor in how he plays. Then on your starting D, we're going to go with DiPietro, Nick Mellon, and a rotation of Jerry Stats and or Jack Kennedy. Like I said, I assume that Leland Rogers will rotate a couple guys in, given that there's a lack of experience on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know Pat March's system well enough to tell you that he would rotate him in, or he won't rotate guys into the offense, or he will run a rotation. But I just see this team taking a huge step forward on offense, even after they've lost pieces like Voigt and Solomon and many others on this team. This is a team that is loaded offensively, while also loaded defensively on the midi lines. Hopefully the midi experience on the defense side will help out the pulls down in the box. So look for that to play a factor in this team. I've got this team outdoing last year's numbers. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the numbers from last year, but I've got this team outdoing them. Probably scoring more goals, maybe giving up more though. Maybe they play a faster game with Pat March, and maybe that backfires a couple times, or maybe it helps this team out get a little bit more confidence on the offensive side. I'm looking at some guys to maybe take a step forward. Some sleeper guys is Matt Magnan, played sparingly last year, but look for him to take a step forward. He's one of my sleepers on the offensive side. And on the defensive side, I'm gonna go with Grant Murphy. Grant played a little bit of short stick defensive midi last year. Maybe he slots in at the pole behind Brett Kennedy to give him a little bit of help on that. That would be my sleepers. And my attack sleeper, there isn't really one on this team besides Mikey Berkman. That's the guy that I see slotting in. I think Desko goes with an all-experience lineup, given the fact that he has to have a good rebound year this year. Although he had a good record last year, which we'll talk about in the schedule episode that's coming out soon. But look for this team to take a big step forward offensively, like I said, and maybe take a step back defensively, but then in years to come, take a step forward, if you know what I mean. So, once again, thank you for listening, and if you want to reach out and have a discussion about this episode or any other episode that you listen to, please feel free to reach out via Twitter and or Instagram at Cuse1987. Sometime in the future, there will be a Twitter handle for this page, which I'll announce when it happens. Thank you.